Hello, Hoopheads, and welcome to the weekly Hoopla, where I break down the need-to-know news in a busy world of the NBA. Before I start, I just wanted to thank you all for watching. And of course, I've got to shamelessly beg you to hit that thumbs up button now. Sorry. Well, now that that's over and the corporate stuff is out of the way, let's get to the injury report. LaMelo Ball is probably the biggest injury news that's taken place since I've last spoken. The right ankle sprain occurred on November 26th, and a reevaluation period will take place at some point this week. This is concerning, obviously, because of a long history with his ankle issues. Something we don't quite know the extent of right now. Of course, this could just be a blip in the season, but we certainly don't want to see continued issues here. We want to hope the Hornets are taking care of it. We want to hope LaMelo's taking care of it. Steph Curry obviously had I don't know if they're exactly similar, but had a lot of reoccurring ankle issues early in his career, notoriously. So it's not the end of the world by any means, but seriously, one of those moments where a young player has to almost prove how much they truly care about their body and how much they care about the rest of their career, because it's just as much on them as it is the Hornets to make sure that this is being taken care of in a way that he can put it behind him. Steph had the braces for so long, still does probably, so whatever the change is that needs to come, it's just one of those things where if it's this much reoccurring issue, you don't seem to see any other issues like with Derrick Rose famously. The landing position was always concerning with Derrick Rose, and then eventually led to the injuries, most likely, or at least highly contributed to the injuries. You don't want to see that happen again in any capacity. So you hope that LaMelo Ball takes this seriously. You hope this is just a blip on the radar. I know the Hornets aren't competing for much right now, but his continued development is really important for everybody. And so we all hope to see him back. Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry's team, to do a terrible transition there, is also facing a little bit of injury problems right now at the guard position. Not to Steph, thankfully, but to Gary Payton Jr. and to Chris Paul. Chris Paul is just having a minor nerve contusion issue. They're probably just going to play it slow and careful with that. I don't think that's the worst case scenario in the world, given the fact that they've had some early success from some of their rookies. I think that they're not necessarily hurting to give minutes to guys that need to prove it before they need to make decisions on people for this season and the future. Chris Paul has been a very nice contributor to this team, but obviously, even if they do still want to keep him and move forward with him in the playoffs, it's important to have him ready for that moment and not this moment necessarily. On the other side of that, Gary Payton Jr. Has a torn calf, and there was a little bit of weird reporting going on with this early, but it is officially a torn calf. And the news of the team is essentially that they'll actually understand what that realistic timetable is at some point this week, probably towards the end. But who knows with these teams? That's a big point here. Obviously, I just mentioned that there's Pods has been great for them. The rookie guard, I think defensively, more surprisingly than anything. So it'd be interesting to see whether this just helps elevate him in the moment, and that maybe this is a kind of happy moment for them, or if this is something that this Warriors team is going to really struggle with again. Last year, it was kind of evident that not having Gary Payton was a problem. That was something they remedied in season, and then he wasn't available still, and now he's not available again. So, you kind of see a frustration there from the organization, the fans, the team, and the player. Because we do think that Wiggins was probably one of the bigger swings for that title. Jordan Poole deserves his credit. Kevon Looney, obviously, besides all the big guys, but ultimately GP2 had as much of an X factor role in that title as anybody. So unfortunate to see him continuously hurt. And another awkward transition, continuously hurt player. We have another update on Ben Simmons, who has just not played basketball in a very long time and is still the back. And maybe this is another lesson for the people who thought this dude was faking for a while. I mean, maybe this is all still a ruse, but I think at this point we have enough consistent reporting on a back injury to think, hey, maybe this guy has a bad back that he has to deal with in his career. Dwight Howard certainly was in his own way in a lot of ways in his own career, but the biggest issue that he ultimately had in his career was the back. I mean, it turned him from one of the all-time players to a really, really high-level player to, eventually just into a role player, but maybe that has more to do with other stuff. So not a Dwight Howard podcast, but we do want to focus a little bit more on this consistent injury to Ben Simmons moving forward. It's an epidural injection that he just got recently. The status is probably going to be updated around the middle of December based on the reporting from the team. So we'll see what that actually ends up looking like. The team looks fine for now. We'll get into actually one of their stars returning in a moment. But at this moment, they are stuck without Ben Simmons. And, what's new? Another team in a similar position, player acquired in a similar manner, holds a similar weight, but I think has a drastically different future and outlook, and especially if you ask any of the fans on Twitter or just in live, Lauri Markkanen in the Utah Jazz. Lauri's been out with a hamstring injury for a good few games now. I can't remember how long this actually has been, like 5 or 6, I think. Not the worst thing in the world for Utah because they've got a logjam of minutes. I mean, there was some funny stuff with Taylor Horton-Tucker starting, and now that's Keontae George. I think the fans are happy to see that, though. I think THT is probably a better player at this point. It's obvious that you need to, maybe move on from some guys. We'll get into that later on in the show. But for this point right now, not the worst thing for Utah to get to see the Sensabaugh kid, to get to see the kid that they drafted in the top 10. I already forgot his name because he just isn't getting minutes. So that'll be an interesting point to see how much more they ended up getting minutes out of this. And then, of course, reevaluation period is due this week. So it's not like he's out for any concerning period of time. It's just like, hey, Lauri, obviously we suck. So we got a lot of young players too. And we probably have to make a lot of trades. And it's kind of obvious. So, make sure that hamstring's great. When it's great, come back. Until it is, just, be careful. Similar situation with much higher stakes going on in Beantown. Kristaps Porzingis has got a left calf strain that's put him on the sideline for a little bit now and has an unclear future. Does not look good for at least the in-season tournament quarterfinal games coming up on Tuesday. But at this point, we are excited to see what the Boston Celtics will look like, to see what everybody kind of comes and brings their A game with, if they do, for the official in-season tournament. But at this point, we don't know that the Kristaps Porzingis version of the Boston Celtics will be playing that night at least. They did list him as day-to-day. That's coming straight from Joe Mazzulla's mouth. So I wouldn't call it concerning. I wouldn't say that it's anything different than he's ever experienced in his career. But obviously, for the in-season tournament purposes, I would definitely say it's a bit of a bummer because we want to see if at full health, all these teams will take it fully seriously. All right. Another injury the last injury that we're actually going to need to update you on is a weird one to update you on because we don't really have a lot of good information other than it's just a lingering hip issue with Bam Adebayo in Miami. Spo benched him in the second half of the game last night, and essentially his reasoning was very simple: I just see you laboring out there like you're not healthy, and I'm not gonna risk further injury because you're my best player or second best player, depends on what you're looking at. So they need it. They need him very, very, very much to be a good team. They're a dangerous 7 and 8 seed with Bam and Jimmy last year, right? But they're just a beatable team with just Jimmy, right? They don't have the size in that department to meet for not having Bam. So it's interesting to see that. We know that there's a lot of heat culture stuff, even though they still load manage. Like Bam and Jimmy have been load managing for 2 seasons pretty consistently. Not crazy Clippers stuff, but consistent. So it's just one of those things where I don't know if they're just going to keep trying to do that version of getting him healthy, or if they're just going to sit him, hope Jimmy can keep this thing 50 at 500, which I don't see why he couldn't, especially with the potential of having another one of their stars back that we'll talk about in a bit. But at this point, playing it safe with Bam is probably the better route. We know they don't care about the regular season as much. We also know that they get the most out of their bench unit. We know that it's just one of those things where I'm not concerned about Miami getting beat by Indiana in early December. They're not either. They need to be concerned about if Bam Adebayo's hip is going to be a problem moving forward, because a hip issue is not going to be ideal. A lingering hip issue could be even worse. So you don't want to play with that crap. So now that we've done all the bad news, all the stuff that you kind of don't like to talk about, it's necessary to talk about, I've bunched up all of our welcome back. One day we'll be fancy enough where I'll have this set up where I can play some fancy music for you, some fancy transitions. For now, you just have to listen to me babble. That's unfortunate for you, but if you give the thumbs up, if you give the like, the subscribe, we can get there faster. Just saying. Not pushing, just saying. Biggest name back, Bojan Bogdanovic. He came back Saturday, had 22 off the bench in 28 minutes. That's really important for Detroit. Obviously, they did not win the game, which is really the biggest issue in Detroit. But the fact that you have that player back, that asset back, looking that seamless after missing so much time, which is not a surprise if you follow that player in his career. He just pretty much is one of the more malleable high-level role players in the NBA, and he's going to covet some assets. I mean, the Pistons, if they don't miraculously somehow turn this into a playoff contender, they're going to sell on him. And, he could be the highest price on the market, really, when you think about it. Unless something really big happens, he could be the highest value on the market. Going down to the Big Easy, CJ McCollum is back. His lungs not perfect, so he did miss a game last night, but did come back for 2 big W's before that. I'm sure they'll probably play it easy there. One of the things that I thought was cool about CJ McCollum's absence was that the Pelicans sort of figured themselves out a little bit as far as the hierarchy in the guard room. Obviously, CJ's an established player. But there is some question in my mind about how do you play Zion, Brandon, and CJ consistently when all three of them don't inspire me all the time or defensively. Brandon, I think, is different where he can just turn it on. Zion, I think this physicality is great, and CJ's a smart player. And so I don't think that they're all just complete negatives or have no potential to work together. I just think there's a lot of evidence that shows the three of them defensively are really tough, and then Valanciunas is very limited, even though he's not too bad. It's just very limited player is how I would describe them defensively. So I think that defensively in the playoffs, Pelicans scare me because they're relying on a couple guys to carry the load, and Herb Jones is a hell of a player, but it gets tough. That being said, Pelicans certainly could be one of the better teams when it comes to shooting the basketball. And a big part of that is Trey Murphy. The third is already back in action. His first game back, 18 points, 7 of 13 from the field in 22 minutes. Pairing him, their kid Hawkins from UConn, who's been just absolutely insane and maybe is creeping into a rookie of the year conversation. Not the winner, but in that voting panel, which is still respectable in this year where Victor Wembanyama is probably running away with it anyway. So I'm really excited to see the Pelicans be able to shoot the basketball for the first time in a long time. Still have to see more of that consistently, but I think the idea, theory, the roster of players is a little bit there more than it has been. Still a lot of other things to work out with that young group, but it's nice to see the health not being a factor as much anymore. Jamal Murray is back in action a little bit. I think that we're going to see a very, very light sprinkling of Jamal Murray in December, maybe ramping him into being an everyday player again by the turn of the year. But at this point, he played one game against Houston on the 29th in Denver, and then was absent for the next 2, which I believe are road games, at least one of them. So I think maybe you're seeing a little bit of them tipping their hand there with Jamal, but at least for now, that they're just going to be very, 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 very safe and very not worried about the regular season, as they should be. It's a competent division. It's not necessarily a winnable division if you stay hurt the whole season, in my opinion, but maybe you don't give a shit, because I think there's a lot of reasons you shouldn't give a shit if you're the defending champion and you feel like you have a good roster that can be healthy for the time it matters. But like I said, Jamal, at this point, I would expect, if you're a fantasy player, not to be getting a lot of a lot of points out of Jamal Murray, right? Points you could get, though, Cam Thomas, he's back and is averaging 22 or 23 points in 2 games, shooting 43% from deep. That's perfect for what Brooklyn needs. We kind of made the jokes early in the season that this was like giving Lou Williams, like the best version of Lou Williams or Jamal Crawford, their own team, because that's kind of what the Nets were to start the season. Things have changed a bit. Mikal Bridges went for 40 last night. They're quite a competent team, full of interesting players. You don't quite know what they're going to do. The Ben Simmons injury doesn't screw up their future, but it certainly makes it to where you're confused as to whether this is a playoff team trying to get better right now, build onto something, or if this is a team that isn't afraid to maybe turn what they have into future assets. So I'm still leaning on the fact that this team wants to just grind it out and build some sort of culture and establish something under Jacque Vaughn, because the Nets have just been a whole nothing burger since going to Brooklyn. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, I'm really hoping that we find that, guys like Cam Thomas, Mikal Bridges can stay there a little bit longer. If it's the Finney Smiths, if it's the Royce O'Neals, like we'll talk about later, that, you can feel a little more palatable with. As for now, you don't want to get too far into those. Keegan Murray's back, limited action last night. Not too concerning about his limited minutes. He plays a lot of hard defense, so I don't see why you would rush him back and play just a ton. He wasn't perfect in his first game back, but he was I think he was a net positive or so. So it's just an interesting player to look for, because as we're going to get into in the rumors part, maybe Keegan Murray and the injury is timely. Maybe there's the future of him and with the Kings is a little more questionable than we thought. Just because of where the team is, but we'll get to that when we have to get to that. Walker Kessler is also back. He's been back for 5 games, so I think I missed that last week. But he's been averaging 10.6 points per game on 60%, which is obviously great for a big man that just has to dunk the ball well, tip ball back well on offense, shoot, make some decent free throws, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks. So obviously, Kessler is definitely one of those guys who could do some historical stuff in the block numbers, given his size and ability. So it's nice that hasn't dropped off a second. And then the final welcome back is Jared Vanderbilt, who had a nice little cameo last night against the Rockets for the Lakers. The Lakers have been kind of an inconsistent group and haven't really had their potential defensive stopper on the roster. So it'll be fun to see if Vando could ramp back up. There was also a question this season of whether he could shoot the ball better than he has in the past, which would significantly change him and the Lakers' potential. So we will begin to track that essentially probably around next week or so, because obviously with where he's starting at this point, I don't expect to see the best version of Jared Vanderbilt until probably closer to Christmas Day, if at all. So then final injury stuff, not quite back yet, guys. Tyler Hero, probably one more week until they ramp him up, and the same for Kelly Oubre. Both guys slated to be on pace, so I think that they're probably going to be practicing hard and suiting up within a week, if not just a little bit more, probably 2 weeks at the worst for both. All right, now jumping into the news and segueing with the worst, because I'm going to go ahead and just lead with the ugly elephant in the room of the NBA right now, and Josh Giddey. Starting first with the clarification on my part that this is something that's happening in the California justice system, not the Oklahoma's justice system, like I explained last week. That does change quite a bit. However, now there's a whole lot more information that doesn't quite make this an interesting story to follow. It makes it quite an ugly story to follow. Newport News is a place in California that is that is actually investigating this. TMZ reported or was able to leak that the family's not trying to work with them at the moment. And then we got more specific or more rumors, I would say, about how they met, how old she was, how old he was, which is just a whole lot of content. I don't think I want to personally promote at this moment because I don't know, just like, Stephen A. wonderfully said, surprising agreeing with Stephen A., but he did where we don't have good information. So responsible journalism is saying, hey, we can't communicate on this story because there's not enough good news, enough and I don't mean good news as positives. I mean solid, hard, concrete, real news with this story, other than what I've just told you. So yes, you can go read through all of the minutia that has been reported, and you can pattern your own belief on whether this was right, wrong, whatever. I think that's probably the better way for people in this world to handle life. If I'm being honest, don't just take my word for it. Look into this, have an opinion on your own with some facts. It's not that hard. It's probably one or two articles. It's not like we have a lot of news, especially in this one. So, just take that in for whatever you want to take it in for. I will cover it again once any legal stuff has been said, whether they drop the case or not, which is unfortunately not out of the question when you understand sort of the other perimeters that are being rumored here, like why I don't think this is going to be an open shut case for anything. I think that most fans are probably going to be very satisfied with this one way or another. Josh Giddey obviously is getting booed everywhere he goes. Opinion on him will always be what it is. He'll have to deal with that in the coming years. Obviously, the NBA, the Thunder, I think will still end up punishing him once this is done. I think you have to remember they legally can't at the moment, or they legally won't at the moment is probably the better way to put it. And so at this moment, I would say you're just don't give into it anymore unless there's real stuff that comes out. I don't think there will be. I would formulate your own opinion and move on with it, because at this point, it's not probably going to come to a head in any way that the whole world feels better for. On to the rumors and the crap that I do like to talk about on this, because it's related to the business. Some people don't like it, but I like it because it's part of the game here. The continuing story of the Chicago Bulls. The downfall will be televised. Billy Donovan safe. I'm not running is the quote from the GM. Interesting comments to come out. Plenty of rumors on the Zach LaVine side of this. A little bit of sprinkling of rumors on the DeMar DeRozan side of this. And a team that might be winning better without Zach LaVine on the court right now, which is kind of what I've theorized, and I think what a lot of people are theorized, and what the Bulls sort of seem to be tipping their hands to, that, of course, they want to try to move LaVine and then figure out what this team is before completely blowing it up at the deadline, if necessary. I would say that LaVine's injury is an interesting time. It's foot soreness. They put him out a week. I didn't mention it earlier because I knew it was going to get to this point. Because I guess maybe part of me is a little careful to call this a serious injury that we need to monitor for the future, and less of a Band-Aid for a situation that's not going the way either side wants it to at the moment. Woj got on ESPN, said there's no market, even though the Bulls are trying. Bobby Marks went on NBA radio, I think, and threw out a wild Pistons rumor, which I don't think has any backing. I think it's just more of his speculation on how the Pistons could salvage this season, which is, I don't really know why, but we're at the early part of the season. Theorize away. So I think there's a lot of interesting parts of the Zach LaVine piece, just in Zach LaVine's soul part, I think that everyone's kind of looking at the Lakers because they're one of the more obvious choices, not just because they're the team that always tries to trade for everybody, or all their fans want to trade for everybody, or LeBron always wants to trade for everybody, which all those things are true. But are they the only real partner in the established teams market? Like, does Philly care about Zach LaVine? Because it doesn't seem like they would. There's the Heat don't seem like they do. So who I guess is the question here? Like, who are the Lakers competing against? The Clippers already blew their load. The Warriors? I don't think the Warriors would look at LaVine as the trade that they would try to make. I don't know. Is the Kings rumors? Maybe we could buy into that. Is that the Kings' best path to being better than everyone else and being clearly better than they've been? I don't know that that's right either. So it kind of looks like the Lakers are the only team that I would say in that established team market that makes sense. Of course, there could be your Hornets teams. Of course, there could be the Pistons, that could decide to get into this conversation at the low cost, and that's fine. But as far as the established teams go, where you want to try to steal those super future first round picks from one of these title hungry teams, I think the Lakers might be just bidding against themselves. And then I don't think they're going to be in a rush to move. And then that puts the Bulls situation in a really ugly one. So all of those are things to watch out for. Then the DeMar DeRozan aspect of this. Personally, I think best situation for the Bulls, probably since they don't quite own all their draft capital, is to move LaVine, Band-Aid this, sneak into the playoffs, have a little fun, and then sort of make harder decisions on the future in the end of this season. I think DeMar DeRozan's been really good to that franchise and been a fun player. I think he's been a part of winning when they've been allowed to sort of be the DeMar DeRozan Bulls. So I would kind of lean into the Bulls at least trying to salvage it this season, unless they really feel like they can hit the asset market hard with Caruso, even get something for Vucevic, Kobe White, Pat Williams. Like, if they really think they can, but I just think they can't. I think you have to get the LaVine deal done. But then after that, you might have a team that you can sort of salvage. You can sneak into the playoffs, ruin that pick a little bit, and then at least have something a little bit to be proud of and be positive about moving forward. And then you can sort of try to figure out where Lonzo really is. You can figure out where what you can move on from in free agency, sort of redirect this team into a position of being a serious threat or something. Or, everyone's going to get fired and it's just going to be an ugly, ugly rebuild again for the Chicago Bulls. What's new for that fan base? 6 titles in a decade. It's a heavy toll. Looks like heavy toll. In a player Bulls fans probably don't love too much, LeBron James, and another historic moment for his career. Most minutes ever. Of course, we're probably running out of most whatevers ever for LeBron, but another good one. At least that part is good. It was in a historic blowout loss to Thunder, 44-point loss, tied MJ as the only other person, 44-point loss at the age of 38. So shout out to the debate, still rages on. These guys, right, neck and neck, right? Everything, even the bad stuff. Oh no, that's right. It was the Sixers because B-Ball Paul called out Anthony Davis early in the day before the game, and then Anthony Davis kind of went out and put one of his so-sos up. He's had not a bad season, but there have been quite a few Anthony Davis so-so games that have been rather unfortunate. This is definitely one of the bigger ones. But of course, hey, LeBron got to make his historic moment, and the Lakers are still above 500, which, hey, when you put in the last 2 years into perspective, I think that's too bad to say. Also, welcome back Bronny James, who has recovered at least enough to be ready to play basketball, and who knows what capacity, but we do know he'll return to USC and play his first college minutes soon. Something that LeBron said he will skip a Lakers game to go do, which, you know what, again, fair enough. Moving into another chapter in history. Kevin Durant has been slowly climbing up the points boards. Last week, I believe it was Elvin Hayes. This time it was Moses Malone. This is an incredible feat. I think part of me wants to talk about how we should note that if you're an NFL fan, sports fan, that the passing game really changed a lot. And as a result, yards and passing records they just ended up getting obliterated, right? Like Brett Favre, like it was this really big deal that he did it, and then Payton did it, and then Tom did it, and then now someone else is probably gonna do it, right? So it was just one of those things where you have to pass this torch. You take it with a grain of salt because there's going to be a lot of guys that get left in history because there's a radical change in scoring. I don't think that Kevin Durant is necessarily a beneficiary of that as much as he is the revolution himself. So very fair to have him here. And then, of course, the thought of where the hell would Kevin be already if not with the injuries? I mean, he hasn't been the most injured player ever, obviously. It's not like we're talking about a Penny Hardaway, T-Mac career. But Kevin has had some pretty significant injuries in his career, and this is, one of those things where it's cracking me up. He's already 10th, or he's jumped to 10th, but he could already be, closer to 5 right now, had he not. All right, and then the final record that we wanted to get into, since we've been since last I talked, the NBA's record attendance of November, 18,208 on average in each arena. That's pretty cool to hear. I think that's an interesting number to actually break down, and maybe people at Sportico and definitely like people like Clay Travis who kind of just hate the NBA. Like, well, but actually, this is those people dive into it, and they'll do their well actuallys. But I'm just excited to hear that. Glad fans are getting out there and enjoying the games. I'm glad that the product is hopefully affordable enough for this. I don't think that where we're at in the country and the times that we're recovering from a few years ago, I'm certainly interested to see how that market pans out, and I'm glad that fans are still attending and are breaking records, and I'm glad that the interest in the NBA seems to match what it feels like when now I feel like there's more parity, there's less of this monopoly of talent that we used to have, even though I kind of miss that empire-like version of the NBA where you see the two empires right here. You see Kobe, LeBron's empire. You have all these different empires. MJ's hidden over above camera, but he's there too. So you just have these guys where it's cool for history. But I think now in the modern game, even though, like I said, it pains me, it's really nice to have this many people care because it feels that titles are attainable by any franchise at all, and that just used to not be the NBA. Speaking of not good things, though, for the NBA. Now, this doesn't directly impact the NBA, but if they were to be named on this lawsuit at a later date, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised or be mad. But Take-Two, the company that makes the infamous 2K game that has probably as much to do with the beloved basketball rise over the last 20 so years, is being sued by a minor, technically, represented by his mother in California. They are calling the use of virtual currency unfair, illegal, and greedy, specifically calling out how deactivating the servers on prior releases forces people to spend more on the games. This is something that people have probably seen. If you're a video game fan, you probably are not surprised by this. There was a famous incident with Star Wars when they made their Battlefront games that loot boxes were super sketchy. They ended up being basically considered like gambling with kids, and they had to drastically change all of that thanks to a lawsuit. The loot boxes are similar to the card packs that players in 2K will have, where you're essentially paying, sometimes you can pay for $100, you only get 30, 40 cards. And then of that 30, 40 card, there may only be, 5 that are good, something like that. So obviously you can see that's not awesome. And then thanks to the good people at Axios, we know that the CEO is compensated based off of how much money they make in VC. Not going to go into the tangent that wants me to go in on, but this is the problem. I good on this mother, good on this kid. I stopped buying 2K. I love the game to death. I love being a nerd and building franchises, doing my career when I can. But dude, they are so robbing us at this point that like we all have to. Like we have no choice. I just can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. If you can, good for you. But yeah, fuck 2K. All right, moving into more fun drama in the NBA. Gloomy days down by the Bay. The Warriors are not doing so hot. A really good start to this season. The Pacific Division of the Western Conference is quite hard this year, and so these struggles are being magnified a little bit there too. Some of the bigger issues is Klay's contract coming up in the offseason. Zach Lowe has already reported that rivals are starting to vulture around the Warriors, talking about how can we steal Levine away, or Levine, so used to the drama with them. Klay away. How can we maybe get an asset out of the Warriors because they're trying to get rid of this contract or try not to deal with the next contract as much as anything. So it's interesting to see where that is. Klay, of course, kind of had a nice bounce back game almost at the same time as this happened. The Warriors don't look dead in the water. They just look like they maybe still need to make some moves in this season. There's been a lot of Draymond Green out of control stuff that we've been talking about. I think it's pretty funny to talk that it always kind of boils to a head. There's been technicals, there's been ejections. You know, we're not living in a world where this is that crazy to me. And Draymond's antics, we've just been over it so many times. I just don't know why we're still having a conversation. Is he out of control? I guess, but like, is it different than anything else in the NBA? I don't know. I think this comes with Hall of Fame level players sometimes, and you know, there's plenty of examples of that. I mean, they come in all different fashions, but they're not necessarily. It's not necessarily fair to call one better than the other one. They all sort of come with this baggage in one way or another. I think really the concern I have is Andrew Wiggins, and it's just, you know, what is Andrew Wiggins kind of the factor in this? Yeah, it's great if Wiggins is always going to be, you know, turn it on for the bright lights kind of guy, which it feels like he's been more than not for the Warriors. But I think that you could see where that bleeds into the inconsistency. That's not what the program for the Warriors was supposed to be built around. You know, that's where maybe the Steve Kerr has lost his voice in the locker room conversation could get louder. Maybe that's where you could call Draymond Green out of control, because him and Kerr now sort of have this atmosphere where guys like Wiggins have won their title and feel like they're good. You know, maybe where some of the young guys don't quite feel like they always have to give it their go, or that they don't feel comfortable giving it their all. All of this stuff that we see play out in the court, and an inconsistent Warriors team that has still, you know, for the last 2 years, not gotten and maximized the most out of easily the best version of Steph Curry. And that it sounds crazy to say, but Curry has not dropped off, and this team has, and you're just at this point where what else needs to be done? Is it catastrophic? Does it actually need to be Steph at the end of this? You know, I couldn't see any future where that's the possibility, but you just never know when it gets this way. So obviously we talked about some of the health issues earlier. Now we turn our heads to figuring out what the Warriors do with CP's $30 million, if that's a thing. So we will get into that a little bit more in just a second, but I wanted to sort of summarize where the bubble of frustration in the Golden State Warriors locker room might be coming from. Also finishing it by calling it a bit overrated, and also just noting that, you know, there's options here. They not always look great, but they're always decent. The question I have is, do you actually think this team is a title contender? And I don't know that I can say that, even if I have all this historical belief with Klay and Draymond and know that Steph is still playing at the level he's playing at. The rest of it scares me. And I just don't think that you could see any other way about this. Moving into probably the biggest part of our little conversation here today, a little rumor recap. We have Hoops Hype that kind of does these aggregated rumor drops where I wouldn't necessarily call them great sourcing. I would call them good sourcing. And I would say a lot of it is based on opinion, based on empirical evidence. I would say that it's a lot of just looking at the obvious and stating it, but with an educated opinion. So that's why I give a little bit of time, but I want to say none of this is hard rumor. This is all just some of the more interesting notes from a rumor drop that is something that if you don't know is pretty usual. And this is just Hoops Hype's version of that. Great website, Newswire, in case you try to keep up on the day-to-day stuff like I do. It's a great tool. The first one, we'll start with the Hawks seem to be circling the Raptors for Pascal Siakam. They are not the only team. I just find that interesting because we already know that there may be Clint Capella contract could be used for something. We know that maybe the DeAndre Hunter contract could be moved for something. So there's a couple interesting ways for the Hawks to get better, and we know that they don't want to be bad, and we know that they're not quite good, so are not consistently that good. So I feel like very certain that the Hawks are circling many teams right now. So I do have an interest in where they're going. So Siakam rumors just kind of fuel that a little bit more. Reports that Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neal are very likely to be moved. I already teased into that earlier. Look, I think that both of those guys are great wings. I just don't know what the price tag is going to be on them. And you can't overpay for guys like that. If you get both, maybe that would be kind of cool. Like I could see a team maybe finding a way to make that work, where you just add in both of those guys into a role that is a little more coveted, that they both have shown consistency at. I think that could work. Similar guy, but with a much heavier contract and a much larger past. Gordon Hayward is also someone that people are calling a lot on. I would be interested to see if that is. I mean, it's a pretty easy move to make if you're the Hornets. I don't really know why or what you would marry into with Hayward long term. I just don't really know who else for his number he exactly impacts. Maybe he's sneaky good in Philly. Maybe it's maybe he's the sneaky good one with Miami. Where it's just give us a little bit of buckets and we'll carry you on the other end kind of deal. Find that interesting. It seems pretty obvious that the Mavs are shopping the contracts of Rashawn Holmes and Maxi Kleber. The only question I have is will any of these trades cost Tim Hardaway Jr., who I think has found the consistency that they want, and probably only helps the fact that he'll be traded at this point, because at this he's the asset. I mean, you don't have a lot of great assets in that building, and he might be one of the premier ones, even though he's finally starting to show you the consistency you've been wanting and the role you've been wanting. Detroit is in a bit of an ugly spot right now because Killian Hayes is playing a lot of minutes. Jaden Ivey is not. Fans don't love that. The Pistons front office allegedly told Jake Fisher, or reports coming out of the office told Jake Fisher that they're not happy with how much he's playing. I don't think Monty Williams is just in love with Killian Hayes. I don't think he's just being an old head. I think that he's doing their bidding and that they're saying the public stuff because they have to. Because it just feels obvious that they're trying to show him off. Hey, we've got this guy. He's pretty good. He's decent. What do you got? Can we get like a protected first and wait? Lots of protections on it. Can we just like try to lock in like a some sort of multiple seconds? Maybe there's a player, whatever they actually feel like a market could be for Killian Hayes, who's shown at times he could be a decent fun guard to have on your team, but never really shown that he's somebody that you need to covet. Talk about the Warriors, but that was reiterated in these rumors, that it could be a desperation trade, packaging CP and the youngsters for something big. It could be just as much as breaking CP up into some other players too. So interesting to stay on that part. The Pacers are probably one of the teams that everyone's going to start looking at as far as needing little assets. I think TJ McConnell, we've all known, is probably the most likely to be traded as soon as the 15th, which is the upcoming deadline that everyone should be watching for. I think there's a lot of teams that probably need a starting point guard or a rotational point guard, and TJ is just riding on the bench in Indiana. So I think that's a pretty easy move. They were awesome with getting Theis out and into a situation that could work for him. I think they'll do the same with McConnell. The Hield stuff is not clear. I think Buddy Hield will continue to be in rumors until he has a new contract at least, but I would still say that calling that iffy is fair. The Clippers are probably going to move on from Bones Highland because he's the only tradable salary they have, and he's just not playing, and it doesn't make sense on a team full of guards. The Lakers are obviously going to be named in any trade rumor ever at all, period. even in like NFL, MLB, they're still just got honorarily mentioned the Los Angeles Lakers. The question, I guess, that people have is which guard would they package? Would it be an Austin Reeves focused deal, or would it be D'Angelo Russell? I think that's a very interesting question for me personally. I think that it's hard to find a happy medium with both of these guys on the court. So I think that's pretty easy and obvious. I would look towards D'Angelo Russell probably having the edge right now. I think Austin Reeves has a little bit more potential for other teams, and I think that they're struggling to find Austin Reeves' groove again. And maybe the six-man role is his best way forward with the Lakers, and then it's all kind of resolved. But either way, you can't start both. So if that's frustrating for the Lakers, then that's why you'll probably see them pick or choose which guy they move in getting a starting level talent. Fire sale in Memphis seems very likely to the fans, but we're not exactly sure that's really possible. Even if it is, who are you talking about? John Conchar, Luke Kennard. Until we're talking about Marcus Smart, I don't really see where this would be. I just don't. I think that's really it. I think if teams are looking around, they're like, yeah, maybe we could add these little pieces and try it out. But Marcus Smart is the guy that I'm like, how much do you want to keep Marcus here? Like, I know you haven't seen it all with Jog and want to stay healthy, but I'm just saying by the deadline, if Marcus is still available, hit up. Maybe a team that would do it is the New York Knicks. I don't know if that's the perfect team, but Evan Fournier's got $19 million just sitting on the bench right now, right? That team's good, not great. That team needs something, right? I don't know that they're star hunting right now. I think that they're star staring. I think they're trying to find someone. I think they're looking around the bar trying to make eye contact, but I don't think that they're finding anything right now. So I think there's a Band-Aid trade coming down the road. I think they're going to end up seeing some version of, a couple role players, whatever. And, they'll be a frisky playoff team. Maybe they would have first round again. And ultimately, we're still having that conversation of Brunson's good, great. Is Randall going to continue to take steps moving forward? Basically, will Randall continue to be a positive impact on winning basketball while being less of an impact on basketball, if that makes any sense? Because he's a great player, but I think he's hoarding a lot of the opportunities that his teammates maybe should be getting at this point, or some of them. So it's just an interesting thing to look at. Do they add to that problem? Do they solve it at all? Is he a part of the package that brings in the star? We'll all be seeing that soon. Market on guys that could shoot but aren't necessarily proven defensive commodities. All of that road leads through Oklahoma City, who's doing just fine without these guys. Although Vesali Micic does get a little bit of run now. Davos Bertans has not gotten much run at all and doesn't expect to get much run at all this season while he's a member of the Thunder. Obviously, both of those guys will be trade candidates. I would say Micic is only playing because they're trying to move him. Some team that needs shooter will end up making a move on Micic because we just haven't seen a lot of it in the NBA. So there's just sort of this, well, what if we strike lightning in a bottle and they're just not giving him enough run because they don't have to. So very interested to see where that actually ends up. Davis Bertans, I don't know that contract or that player is really much of an intriguing thing, but maybe in another deal it kind of works. Good luck for the Thunder. At the end of the day, you have to remember Sam Presti loves his picks, so if you throw a couple of seconds at him, you might be able to get it, and then hey, it's another bench option for now. Maybe a team like the Philly Sixers, maybe they're the ones that are like, hey, whatever, we need a little extra shooting, Bertans for this bullshit protected second, and then here's the contract fodder, whatever. That could be it. We obviously know that they're in a weird situation where they need to kind of make up for the lost contract that has been Ben Simmons, then James Harden, now is whatever it is, and now it is in multiple pieces that maybe will work out, maybe won't. Now they've got to kind of figure out if it's just taking a bunch of pieces from other people or if it's going out and trying to make a slam dunk trade with whatever they have left. Maybe Malcolm Brogdon would be the one. the Blazers are kind of in the position of, obviously we don't expect anything from you guys. We want, except for to play a lot of Shaedon Sharpe minutes, just continue to make sure that it's the Shaedon Sharpe show. Even when Scoot gets back, maybe Scoot has to come off the bench. I don't know. The Shaedon Sharpe show has been fun. They're not winning a lot of games. That's fine, but we're enjoying it. The fans are loving it. And then Jeremy Grant. Do you keep Jeremy Grant while you're rebuilding this young locker room, or do you go ahead and just cash in on those assets? Because it does feel like you maybe could get something fairly valuable. Dougie McBuckets, Cedi Osman, and Devontae Graham. Yeah, that's the yes. It's always hard to remember when we have all these really interesting small guards that come in and they have just a generic last name. This is the kid who's super fucking good at Kansas and then was no one cared about it and then just went off on the Hornets and then went over the Pellies. Pellies didn't quite use him very well. Sent over the Spurs. Spurs don't seem to use any point guards very much this season, so he's needing a little bit of a home. All three of those guys, I would say, cool, interesting, intriguing rotational pieces. Nobody that's swinging you anything. So ultimately, I'm not sure what value the Spurs will get back. I guess McDermott could. I think that's probably the one where you have a big, tall, potential three-point sniper for your playoff caliber roster that maybe you're confident in defensively. Otherwise, I think maybe that's the only situation for him. And then the Raptors, what the fuck are the Raptors? I've talked about a million times. You've heard me talk about basketball and projecting the future. You can't project the Raptors. The Raptors don't make sense. They operate within themselves. This year they're mediocre, but then Scotty Barnes is sort of taking a leap to where you're like, man, I like this team a lot. And maybe Siakam is the necessary person to go, but then OG might be at the highest value. So then do they just cash in on OG? I don't know. That this team absolutely confused. I think that they're probably the team that the Knicks and the Sixers are both really hopeful moves on from OG, but I don't know that either one of those teams will have the assets required to actually make a Raptors deal, because the Raptors deal getting done is hell on earth. So it's an interesting one to look out. And then sort of a grouping here of Washington and Utah. I've got 6 players to kind of think about for your favorite team or maybe another title contender. Taylor Horton-Tucker, Colin Sexton, Kelly Olynyk with Utah, DeLon Wright, Danilo Gallinari, and Landry Shamet with Washington. All affordable contracts, probably things that wouldn't cost much to actually put onto your roster other than the contract itself, swap for guys I would be really intrigued with adding to my team. Again, all sort of case by case based on what you would need from them, but all names that I think make a lot of sense in the trade market, and in the case of Danilo Gallinari, especially in the buyout market. Getting into sort of wrapping up the news part of this, Mark Cuban did sell. Didn't bring it up as a big part of this because we talked about it on the main pod, but if you haven't followed that, what do you do? Go over there. Go like and subscribe to it. Go comment on it. Go make fun of Caesar, but be nice. Don't go too crazy. Just make fun of it for rooting for the Eagles. You know what I mean? So what we have here is basically the Cliff Notes version is Mark sold the majority ownership to a group that's based out in Vegas, big into the casino world. This is part to do with keeping the Mavericks relevant in a very high stakes money game when it comes to the NBA governorships. And I think it's also a big part of downtown Dallas and what he's going to do to the city. And, obviously he has a bigger role maybe in life. He's still going to control the team. For now, it seems like that's sort of going to be on his terms on when he wants to be done with it. But it seems at this point that it's pretty much just on his terms. The need-to-know name for Mavs fans is Patrick Dumont. He's going to be the new official governor of the Mavericks. This is the stepson of the lady who officially owns Mavericks. And he will be the new governor. So he is essentially, from what it seems like, who Cuban is grooming to take over the team. And once it's done, Cuban will now be an alternative governor. And of course, because this is real hip-hop journalism, this still needs to be made official by vote. So all of what I just said is pending, but most likely going to happen. And a couple of quick hitters to be done with it, and staying on the Mavericks. Luka Doncic had a child and missed a game, but then came back and helped the Mavs go on a 30-0 run, which is the NBA record. Unfortunately, they did lose the game, but Luka is now a daddy, and that's the positive side of the story. Only reason I'm even bringing it up. Speaking of Euros, maybe you don't care about this, but I find it interesting. Filip Petrusev, I believe is how you pronounce it, had been spending a bit of a time bouncing around this season. He was in Philly for a bit, went to the Clippers, and the Clippers moved him over, or in that deal with Harden, and then the Clippers moved him over to the Kings before he ever played there. He ended up just saying, you know what, I'm going back to the European leagues, or I can be a starter. I can play a lot, get paid pretty decent too. Interesting path. He did mention, though, that he wasn't running for good. It's not a Miricic deal. He was like, hey, there's no room for me in the NBA right now. They don't quite understand what I can do. I need to go to the European leagues again, get back into the really develop my game as a starter, and then they'll see, and I'll be back. I think that was the mentality. Also, Dwight Howard might be circling European leagues. I don't think that'll happen because those people are, they're trying to run serious businesses. But if it does, believe me, I will let you know. Couple things to watch. George Gervin's documentary is now on the NBA app and will be aired on NBA TV December 13th. If you don't know much about the Iceman, he was basically a sign of the future from the past. In his era, he seemed like he was going to be the only kind of player you could see like that. Now he's sort of the model for this influx of super talent, of size and skill. The documentary also gets into how the ABA is pretty damn responsible for how much excitement the modern NBA game has. So please go watch that. And then a fun little mix-up here for the basketball coverage. TNT and ESPN are going to team up to do the in-season tournament for the semifinals only. So quarterfinals, that'll happen first. That'll be your normal broadcast. For the semifinals, the stuff that's actually in Vegas, it'll be TNT's broadcast. We'll have Doc Rivers adding it. ESPN will add Reggie Miller. I know both of those are funny, but just telling you, ESPN's pregame with the Big Four will be tagging in. TNT will do the post-game coverage with Stephen A. and Wilbon jumping up. So just a little fun thing to watch. And speaking of the in-season tournament, this is our final, well, I guess not final, the second to last in-season tournament based coverage of the standings and the leaderboards. To catch you guys up, everything ended up with the Kings coming back to beat the Warriors on the Malik Monk game winner. That locked them into position. The Mavs ended up beating the Rockets. That helped put the Pelicans in. And, of course, the biggest controversy going into the finish of group play was the point spread. And Andre Drummond. We saw the Celtics complaining on one hand and then literally hacking on the other. And then surprise words of wisdom. Now, I'm a big Devin Booker fan. I live in a city that's not full of Devin Booker fans, to say the least. But I will say, I thought his opinion on this was great. Very simple, very kind of old heady, if I'm being honest. But I think sometimes the old head stuff is right. This is a lot of crying over spilled milk. You're professional athletes. We've long had this unspoken rule in basketball where you're not supposed to score when the game is out of reach and you're running the clock down. You're not supposed to shoot, right? Cool. I get it. At the end of the day, who gives a fuck? Like, who gives a fuck? The stats are so goofy because of all the other different variables that happen in a game. We already account for that when we talk about stats, if you're serious. We don't care about its effect on that. We don't think this is really, you're just being mad because you have to play out the full 48 minutes. It's just stop crying. Like, it just doesn't work. It doesn't matter. We're not going to feel bad. Nobody cares. I will say the Haka Andre Drummond thing was annoying, but I get it. The Celtics had to do it. I'm not going to bitch at them. Just one of those things where the point differential isn't the best thing in the world. I understand that, but it's not that sinister either. It's really just asking you guys to take a couple of regular season games seriously. It's a 48-minute window. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. And it comes back to competition, right? If you don't want us to score, stop us. That's always going to be the mentality, because if that ever goes away, then the competition does start to go away. So unfortunately, you do have the answer to that. Though I do understand it's kind of bullshit. This is how business works. What to look forward to. The quarterfinals are set up with the West bracket. The 1-4 matchup is going to be Lakers Suns. And the West 2-3 matchup is going to be Kings Pelicans. The East matchup is 1-4 Bucks Knicks. And the East is 2-3 Pacers Celtics. So Tuesday night, you'll have Lakers Suns and Bucks Knicks. Monday night, tonight, you'll have Kings Pelicans, Pacers Celtics. So guess what I would probably guess is Pellies have been nice. Let's go Monday first. So Pellies have been nice right now. Kings feel more competent than they have been in a while. I'm going Kings over Pelicans. No, Pelicans over Kings. Celtics over the Pacers on Monday night. Lakers over the Suns, because the Suns are still just a little too unhealthy, and the Lakers should be getting right about healthy on Tuesday. They should have as full of a roster as they've had in a while. Bucks will beat the Knicks in a really shitty game, and then Thursday we'll do the semifinals, the Final Four. And my pick here, it would be Lakers Kings. No, I picked Pellies. Lakers Pellies. I would pick Pellies on this one, maybe. No, I'm gonna pick the Lakers, because let's be honest, the Lakers are probably gonna take this super seriously and then not take anything else seriously for a couple months, and then some trade's gonna happen and they'll take things seriously again. So they'll get into the championship game. They will face. We get Bucks Celtics rematch. I'm going Celtics again in that, KP or not. Then we get Celtics Lakers for the first IST tournament. Oh man, David Stern, he's up there working hard. It's a wet dream for him. Gotta have Lakers Celtics. The brand, the history. And then probably lead to the Celtics, because even though the Lakers will take it seriously, they're not that good of a team. They just LeBron's still good. Anthony's still fucking amazing when he's on his best game. That puts you in a lot of conversation. So I'll go Celtics to beat the Lakers in the IST championship game, which will be Saturday. And I'll be coming to you the day after, giving you all the highlights of that stuff. We'll look at, I think there's an MVP. There's like a all IST tournament. We'll put all that together. We'll package it up. We'll enjoy this little moment of history of the first ever IST. And then we'll move on to the stuff that I care a little bit more about. I'll preview a little bit of here for you guys, where I'm excited to talk about the Wolves and what we've seen so far there. We've got some thunderous and magical leaps from a couple of young teams. And then, is there 5 playoff contenders in the Pacific Division? Because I think there are. So there's a lot of interesting stuff to look forward to. I think there might be 5 contenders in the Northern, the Atlantic Conference. Or division. So lots of stuff to get into with the season tournament being over. I will focus on the leaderboards, the MVP conversations, the stuff that we can start looking at now that we have these bigger sample sizes. Now that I feel like I'm more comfortable with who these teams are and what they need, that's sort of a mystery every season, and we need about a month or 2 to sort of actually have data that we can believe in. So until that time, guys, go out and enjoy life. But when you're done, come back and see us. And of course, please like, subscribe, comment, fucking share, do some guerrilla marketing for us. If you don't mind, just go walk into somewhere in public and just start playing this really loud over an intercom if you can. Be creative. Don't get arrested. We can't afford your legal bills, but we appreciate creativity. Deuces.